I am sorry for being inactive, but as things in life have to be done, I have been unable to produce a video. So suggest a video idea in the comment section below. I will post a video every Sunday. So stay tuned. On another line, with the coronavirus going around, please be safe and think twice before panic buying. Anyway, on with the tape. It's a weird and wonderful world we live in. Many of us don't truly appreciate how incredible it is to be alive and thinking at a time when technological advances provide us with so many ways to discover more about Earth and our galaxy. It may seem like the more you learn, the stranger it gets, but isn't that the fun part of discovery? The woolly mammoth, Mammoths primigenius, is an extinct species of mammoth that lived during the Pleistocene until its extinction in the early Holocene epoch. It was one of the last in a line of mammoth species, beginning with Mammoths subplaniferans in the early Pliocene. When the Egyptians were building their pyramids, the last mammoths roamed the world. DNA sequencing of remains of two mammoths, one from Siberia 44,800 years ago and one from Wrangel Island 4,300 years ago, indicates two major population crashes, one around 280,000 years ago from which the population recovered, and a second about 12,000 years ago, near the Ice Age's end, from which it did not. The Wrangel Island mammoths were isolated for 5,000 years by rising post-Ice Age sea level, and resulted in breeding, and their small population of about 300 to 1,000 individuals led to a 20% to 30% loss of heterozygosity, and a 65% loss in mitochondrial DNA diversity. However, the population seems to have subsequently been stable, without suffering further significant loss of genetic diversity. Genetic evidence thus implies the extinction of this final population was sudden, rather than the culmination of a gradual decline. Before their extinction, the Wrangel Island mammoths had accumulated numerous genetic defects due to their small population. In particular, a number of genes for olfactory receptors and urinary proteins became non-functional, possibly because they had lost their selective value on the island environment. It is not clear whether these genetic changes contributed to their extinction. It has been proposed that these changes are consistent with the concept of genomic meltdown. However, the sudden disappearance of an apparently stable population may be more consistent with a catastrophic event, possibly related to climate, such as icing of a snowpack or a human hunting expedition. Well, around this time not only did the ancient Egyptians live, but the disappearance coincides roughly in time with the first evidence for humans on the island. The woolly mammoths of eastern Beringia, modern Alaska and Yukon had similarly died out about 13,300 years ago, soon, roughly 1,000 years after the first appearance of humans in the area, which parallels the fate of all the other late Pleistocene proboscids, mammoths, gomphotheres, and mastodons, as well as most of the rest of the megafauna of the Americas. In contrast, the St. Paul Island mammoth population apparently died out before human arrival because of habitat shrinkage resulting from the post-Ice Age sea level rise, perhaps in large measure as a result of a consequent reduction in the freshwater supply. Changes in climate shrank suitable mammoth habitat from 7,700,000 square kilometers, 3 million square miles, 42,000 years ago to 800,000 square kilometers, 310,000 square miles, 6,000 years ago. Woolly mammoths survived an even greater loss of habitat at the end of the Salt glaciation 125,000 years ago, and humans likely hunted their remaining populations to extinction at the end of the last glacial period. Studies of an 11,300-11,000-year-old trackway in southwestern Canada showed that M. primigenius was in decline while coexisting with humans, since far fewer tracks of juveniles were identified than would be expected in a normal herd. The decline of the woolly mammoth could have increased temperatures by up to 0.2 degrees Celsius (0.36 degrees Fahrenheit) at high latitudes in the northern hemisphere. Mammoths frequently eat birch trees, creating a grassland habitat. With the disappearance of mammoths, birch forests, which absorb more sunlight than grasslands, expanded, leading to regional warming. However, the woolly mammoth has remained culturally significant long after its extinction. Indigenous peoples of Siberia had long found what are now known to be woolly mammoth remains, collecting their tusks for the ivory trade. Native Siberians believed woolly mammoth remains to be those of giant mole-like animals that lived underground and died when burrowing to the surface. Woolly mammoth tusks had been articles of trade in Asia long before Europeans became acquainted with them. Gaiak, The 13th century Khan of the Mongols is reputed to have sat on a throne made from mammoth ivory. Inspired by the Siberian natives' concept of the mammoth as an underground creature, it was recorded in the Chinese pharmaceutical encyclopedia, Ben Kao Gang Mu, as Yin Shu, the hidden rodent. The indigenous peoples of North America also used woolly mammoth ivory and bone for tools and art. As in Siberia, North American natives had myths of observation explaining the remains of woolly mammoths and other elephants. The Bering Strait and Inuit also believed the bones came from burrowing creatures, while other peoples associated them with primordial giants or great beasts. Observers have interpreted legends from several Native American peoples as containing folk memory of extinct elephants, though other scholars are skeptical that folk memory could survive such a long time.
Claims.
There have been occasional claims that the woolly mammoth is not extinct and that small, isolated herds might survive in the vast and sparsely inhabited tundra of the northern hemisphere. In the 19th century, several reports of large shaggy beasts were passed on to the Russian authorities by Siberian tribesmen, but no scientific proof ever surfaced. A French chargé d'affaires working in Vladivostok, M. Gallen, said in 1946 that in 1920, he had met a Russian fur trapper who claimed to have seen living giant, furry elephants deep into the taiga. In the late 19th century, rumors existed about surviving mammoths in Alaska. In October 1899, Henry Tuckman detailed his killing of a mammoth in Alaska and his subsequent donation of the specimen to the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. The museum denied the story. The Swedish writer Bengt Sjögren suggested in 1962 that the myth began when the American biologist Charles Haskins Townsend traveled in Alaska, saw Eskimos trading mammoth tusks, asked if mammoths were still living in Alaska, and provided them with a drawing of the animal. Bernard Heuvelmans included the possibility of residual populations of Siberian mammoths in his 1955 book, On the Track of Unknown Animals. While his book was a systematic investigation into possible unknown species, it became the basis of the cryptozoology movement. Due to the large area of Siberia and Alaska, that woolly mammoths survived into more recent times cannot be completely ruled out, but all evidence indicates that they became extinct thousands of years ago. These natives likely had gained their knowledge of woolly mammoths from carcasses they encountered, and that this is the source for their legends of the animal. Thank you for watching this video. Like and subscribe if you want to see more. In the comments area below we ask you to write what you want me to do a video on. Bye.